For me chacha ubi bia baby a wohwe dwumadi edi free bididi na nachidom hene dwumadi ya bakosem history 101 nene nkomo a me ne wudie yedi enkomo afa ekwan a efaso a enamso na Christianity ana Christosom efaso ebewie ewo yeman mu Ghana ana se Gold Coast ana se in the Ashanti Empire enti se ne wagebre na woni medi mpunimpu ewo history 101 abakosem dwumadi so a na make am for am say obe subscribe to this channel na wa like and wa share na wa hit it on the notification button say the bear ya the video be atokwa and I see about live say the entire streaming no na won't wait me at and can wa join it and then me ma wakwa babiem na makai wo sen koma ye die no Christianity in Gold Coast or in the Ashanti kwan ya Christosom efa so e de be pie mu in the Ashanti Empire or in Gold Coast and I said Ghana maimu. Na said the yen na yenim no. Christosom de ene memene wo de yebeto se yen ananom ekuremu. Na ekwan ye fa so a free Europe. Memo bi na ada se Christosom Africa aha ni free. The form of what ni efre no ene Christosom no enye no na ne ye de aba se Christosom no. In a latter day ye be komu de. Na ubi a open na asem aka ebeka se Christianity ehya from Ethiopia enye nokre sabio Izana a wono ne the first Ethiopian a wo be Christoni no a Greek monk a ye friend Frumentius ono na sabio o converti sa abranti e de ne ko Christosom mu enti once again e batrese ye fact ne se wonyankopon asoma ne doba se womra mewu empipa ewiase nyina bone na ebibiman ye nhunu ya ante abrofo ena in the 15th century wo mo etna subuntum ship ebepie mu on our coast Elmina ebeka asa ensem yi ede kire ye ansa na sabio menewo ye nananom tese onyankopon asoma ne doba bi abewu age ye nkwa se ye kọ enkomo yi mu a yenkomo yenhyase emfree Reverend Thomas Peacock. Reverend Thomas Peacock na oye Methodist missionary. Na wone Asante hene wosebonsu a odika wosebonsu. Ane Asante hene wosebonsu enya nkita hodie around 1876. Ebra na Methodist missionaries no epese wo modi Christosom ebepiem in the Ashanti Empire. Na yenhwe nkita hodie a ekoso between sa empanimfo emienu. According to Openi Peacock, was say Asante hene was say mensa bonsu e refuse the advances say womodi Christosom eba Asante memu na was kiremu a Openi ni kan nsem ensem na Openi ni kan ye no wode atudwa na ensem no beebi a ho adansedie ewo ensem a wo mo kire a Asante hene was say mensa bonsu e kan ye no ho adansedie ewo the Gold Coast Methodist Annual Records 1910 edition ena sa ensem yi se wo pebia anadansedie a wobenya wo na me se wo bere ma me kotu ensem a wo mo kire a mensa bonsu e kan ye ani wo hene mensa bonsu otumso mensa bonsu opemso e kan ye wo say we will not select our children for education. We will not select our children for education, for Ashanti children have better things to do other than sit all day idle to learn. They have other work to do. They have other work which is much better than sitting. They have other works. They have other works which is much better than going to school. Enti de openi mensa busu epesu wochiri mu ane se wono wonya Asante hene no wonya sebi wonya hwehan emma asantefo nkwada no enkonkotena missionary school. Mind you, school na ne ye ka ho asem sabre enye no ne wo elementary school ni wa yi awoko no there be sabre na ye Sunday schools. Enti nkwada ne ko school aye ko kire omo the English language and a Bible studies. Those were the only things and not missionaries no omo kire nkwada no. So they will go and sit under a tree or somewhere and learn sa enema we what you say ha na we na was say mensa bonsu Asante hene den chire mu a wono wo makwan ma nkwada ne nkotena Sunday school me nkɔ chire wo mo say Yona bonsu mene no bra wo kɔ ne nibe ebre kwa nkwada no betimi akɔ akosua de opeso wo ye otomfo ebeba timi akɔ akosua metal work de opeso what you say de opeso wo ye pottery de opeso wo ye weaving ebetimi akɔ akosua weaving de opeso osua hunting ebetimi adi bomofo bi achi asua hayo enti ehu hia so mba akɔtena se ekɔ akɔye saa de we na mensa bonsu saa bre no wopem so wo tumfo edi ho enkomo ye toa so a wo say or say the Bible is not a book for us. God at the beginning gave the Bible to the white people, Quran to the Muslim, and the gods to us. The gods tell us where the gold is with which we trade. We know God already ourselves. As for the commandments of God, we know that we keep them all. We keep the first through the gods. In Ashanti, we do not allow people to abuse the name of God. As to keeping the Sabbath, we have always kept it. If a man steals, we kill him. If a man takes the wife of another, we kill him too. We will never embrace your religion. And this religion in question is Christianity. For it is your religion that has ruined the Fanti country, weakening the power of chiefs, and has made both free men and slaves equal before the law. This is through the Gold Coast Methodist Annual Records, 1910. And wapem so mensa bonsu ene wapeni Picot edi sa enkita homa ne te ne ho asese over his dead body ni wumpa so ena ono de obema kwan ama Asante enkwada ene mmabunu eja wo mu nnwuma aseso wo mu di ma Asante man efa na etuma pe efira ho na wo mu kotena eduase so wo mu kwa akosom Kristofo enyame no na enkomo enemi ni wudie enkomo ye echemu miensa na ye de ahwe ekwan a stage by stage ekwan e fa so a Christianity e de betre ye ewo ye man mu Ghana ene the Gold Coast and I said through the Ashanti Empire and I said the Fanti nations na enkomo yi the edikan no ye fa e de free 1451 to the 1700s 1451 to the 1700 na the etoso mienu no ya fa free the 1700 to the 1820s 1700s to the 1820s now ye the free why ye the free the the third edition no ye the free 1820 to 1957 ebra Ghana edinya ni independence beti ene 2025 year me ne wo edi nkomo on history 101 abakosem dwumadi na ye nhwe the first phase no ebe kire yen say Potochi and I say Portuguese missionaries NAD kan ebepie mu in our coastal area ukura ye frɛ no Elmina na ebra wo mu bepie mu no as usual abakosem emiyeti asese wo mu de wo mu missionaries ebaye na so missionaries no enyume na wo mu die no na centered around Empuano na wo mu aye wo mu ho chaplain ama the traders Portuguese traders na wo maba bepiem ewo Elmina any Gold Coast no abrante don Diago di Azambuja ene ne important ne nkrofo na ebepie mu na sa enkomo ya meni wudi ho adansedie historian na ye frɛ no Swiss German historian na ye frɛ no Hans Werner de Branner wono na wo kyerɛ sa ensem yi sɛ the first missionaries acting as chaplain to the European traders alongside the coast concentrated their activities more on the Europeans doing only a limited amount of teachings and preaching among indigenous communities. Now, was such the mua wapenia your friend Clark, openi Clark H the mua was say the arma missionaries no woma dwuma no ankoso na antimi antre ni nyina ne say many missionaries became more interested in trade than in missionary works. Na kyerɛ sɛ wo kyerɛ mu a missionaries no bebre no ano Woman ni beji gold any slave na ye trading ne ho more than sebio ye ba beka wonyankopon kro asem e de akere abibiman. Na asa asem we sa asem we a wopani Clark eken. Ena wopani a ye friend John Babot. Wopani a ye friend John Babot. Empanifo wopani John Babot na oye eyewitness. Na chese de course we nyina no one de na ni kurotwi a wisi a ne hwene tia asantemu na wo bi na de course we nyina course nti wono so edidi wono hunu ye esu etu dwa a wo kiremu a wo se en wopani wo twere ne nsem in 1680 en wopani John Babot twere ne nsem ya mekan ede akere we wo kiremu a the great concern of the Dutch on this coast as well as all other Europeans settled or training there is the gold and not the welfare of those souls. It wapeni chiremu a botaye de ne hia sabio Dutch missionaries any all the European missionaries ano maba be piem wo Gold Coast any Elmina any important bo nyina no na eye gold a wo mo benya ene ho hia wo mo na emom enye wo nananom ekra wo mo je se de yakama waso ate se eye wo kra ye pe ede age enkwa entina sabio abrofo ne baaye na emom Babot John Babot em yeti ase se from ne homa wo twere ni in 1680 no kira gold trade no na na mpanimfo yi wo mo anije ho na wo mo anije ho wo kiremu a many Ghanaians remained indifferent to Christianity and were even hostile to the formation of a church that rivaled their indigenous religion. Into openi kiremu a sabio Ghana fo anase Gold Coasters anase wonananom no sabio Christosom no na yade a na o mani enye ho kura na ntinu won esori tia esum bia no a ebeba na aba be kata wo mo traditions and mo customs so yekoye nim no ye nyina ya ba be hu say the first missionaries no were led by Don Diego de Azambuja na ye kiremu a say ye bu nkompo e de akwa akohwe ye chi a wopani Don Diego de Azambuja in the 1481 ena Portugal for hene a ye friend King John a wotoso mienu commission no e de sa adwumadie no a wode share wo mo nsa so wo mra medi wo sabio Africa ene ye important ha no share wo mo nsa eti once again it is evident to say missionaries no sabio enye se na obi nim ana se sabio me wo fa adom chedi a ena wafa ne nkrofo no wo ye crusade Nemum wo mine ankasa it was a state sponsored event. What you say? Wo mine ankasa na eto ne nsa e de frɛ ankrenkre small mo ema wo mo ekokodi sa ejuma na what you say? Now fast forward from 1481 to 1493 and 1483 that is 4th May 93 sorry. And Pope your friend Pope Alexander the Sixth one also nhyehyeye true ne papa bu a wotu ne din intercaetera kire se ewiase no wachemu mienu based on authority a wonyankopon de ama no se ewiase no wachemu mienu wo de efa ama Spain for wo de efa ama Portugal for se wo mo nkokonka wiase na wahini bia no a wonye Kristo ni bia no yenyi na hini ene na dwapade ene ne manfo nyina no emfa nhye wonyankopon edin animunyam enti around this time ana Portuguese for nam Africa no omoye omo missionary works ni nyina no na kire se in the years ahead no na pope no am omo ho kwan se omo etimi di sa ejuma no now ye koye animu a around 1482 ena wohene a ye frɛ no Kwame na ansa a wo Elmina Sabri ya mekan na putu chief we aba bepi mu Elmina no wohene Kwame na ansa ema kwan ema missionaries no ebepie mu ene Kristosom ede bepie mu na hemfie na enam so wone ne hemfo ni nyina no eje Kristo etum mu se wo mo kra ene wo mo age nkwa na Kristosom no eyede ede bepie mu na John Diego de Azambuja esan se wo mo nam kwan so na wohene Kwame na ansa etimi age Kristosom atum ni ntiro wohene Kwame na ansa ene ne hemfo enso ma wo mo asase ba bia wo mo nsi wo mo sese na wo mo trade mission no wo mo enfa enhyehyɛ so nti ba bia wo mo si wo mo dan no esi ye no ampa opani no edito Sao George de Mina anase Saint George of Mina anase Elmina the Elmina Castle no a isi ho no. Now yenko yanimu enokura ni se Ghanaians anase Gold Coast anase Ashanti fo anamfanti fo no nokura ni se Christosom no enya ade a wo mo agi tu mu firi se na Christosom no ade a etwetwe wo maso enti saa bre no the only people anki betimi aka so wo mo gi tu mu wo hene Kwame na ansa ne hemfo ane ene sabiu abrofo na no mo de o ma ba bipiem no mo ye wo mo Christofo edada no enti on record kire se in 1503 and in 1503 ena wo hene Kwame na ansa ene Elmina hemfo ni nyina no wo mo agitumu ema yebo wo mo asu ema wo beye Christopher na sa enkomo wa abakosem history 101 so enkonko ye bosiremu ka ana asese biu na wadanse di wo hen no wo pani a ye friend Lamin Sane Wopeni Lamin Sane or a professor of mission and world Christianity at the Yale Divinity School and was a professor of history at the Yale University. Onu odi sa ensem yi nyina atuja. Eti wopeni ni nsem madawroma. Moma me enkenkan kakra wopeni ni chiremu a was say the palace elite na kire se Kwame na ansa ene ne hemfo a ewo Elmina ahemfie ho nsem no wo Kenya. Was say the palace elite converting rather than ordinary masses. Masses. The palace elite converting rather than the ordinary masses. Na kire se ahemfie ho mpanimfo no wo convert into Christianity rather than omanfo no ane timamufo no enye wo ena convert ye woti ase na what was aka say it seems the palace conversion was primarily motivated by political and economic reasons as the king sought support from a foreign power, the Portuguese, on whom he could rely in case of attack by other local states. Enti wopeni Lamin Sane chiremu a botayenti a ema Elmina enhemfo no agi Christianity ni tu mu ne se na wo mo pese wo mo ne omode wo mo tam ekoba abrofo no etamano. Said a bad trader umbenya preferences over other indigenous tribes. Na se indigenous tribe ni bi betwehye omo so a wo manya abonten so for foreign powers amoma ba betai wo machi ayeden ene wo mo adi akon enti said ye ka no around 1503 wo hene Kwame na ansa ene ne manfo ne hemfo a ewa hemfie ena agi Christianity no ayeden atum. Na wonim se enamo se na Ghana fo no a eti ase sa abre no anye wo madwene so ombagi Christianity na tum ne nti no Potochi fo no establish schools, missionary schools. Missionary schools no wo concentrate on mulattoes no na che se half caste wo mo abrofo ne ni wo mo aba bede dawo ne woti ase before any enkwada Europeans no ankasa enkwada wo mo so de wo aba be pi mu no wo mo ena sabio school no na yede tete wo mo de wo mo fa sa enkomo yi abrantie Ralph Weltgen ena wono nso de eho enkomo de betu dwa na yenhwa de enkomo a won se Elmina fo de wo ho akwakobo Potochi said de be ya indigenous tribe anaso obi ba beto ahye ne so a wo mbetimi ne nakon no sa asem we bi esiye in December 1625 Elmina fo ti baby omonka wo bibi anhyiemu wo mo behwe a Dutch fo ene Holland fo Dutch fo na aboaboa edombe 1200 ano adan a Elmina fo mo de mo ho abo Potochi fo enti no yempemu asem ye ba beto ahye mo so ne abo mo age bukuro no na botaye wo mo de ba beto ahye mo so ane se wo mo ba be defeat Elmina fo na wo mato Elmina fo so wire na wo mo betimi afọ man enkoa no wo ma cheche wo mo de wo ma ye nkoa ne aton wo mo de wo ma kwa kopie in the new world which is the Americas na abakosem emieti ase se Elmina kurom hofo no ankasa eka wo mo hu bo mu wo say ye ema Dutch troops 1200 no wo mu di wo mu nyina esosa ema wo mu eka ye no wɔn de wɔn nan mu mmirika edwane kɔkɔtena wɔn boot ne wɔn shape mu de edwane yɛ saa nkɔmɔ wei aberante a yɛfrɛ no Richard Ward ɛna adansidie ɛyɛ den ɛbɛtu edwa ɛde bɛbɛtu dwa na yɛnhwɛ saa bere nyinaa no a ɛkɔ no na kyerɛ sɛ Christianity no aseɛ ɛnyɛ den ɛnya ntintim yɛ ɛwɔ yɛman mu ha na around 1737 ɛna the United Brethren or the Moravian Church founded in Denmark for sorry a wɔn te by Nicholas Zinzendorf wɔn nso extended missionary wɔn de missionary foforɔ bi bɛpie mu na missionary na wɔn de bɛpie mu no na yɛfrɛ no Christian Protein yɛwo no ne papa ɛyɛ Danish ni na kyerɛ sɛ ne papa firi Denmark ɛna ne maame yɛ nkrani ne maame yɛ nkrani enti na kyerɛ sɛ abranteɛ no wɔte nkran kasa no enti Denmark foɔ no ɛyɛ wɔn adwene sɛ wo akɔyɛ wo maame akɔyɛ nkrani na wo papa kɔyɛ Denmark ni ne de ebia wo ne de ɔba ensɛm no wo bɛka kyerɛ ɔmo a ɔmo bɛte aseɛ na wɔn asesa wɔn adwene aba abɛyɛ Kristofoɔ enti wɔpanin no nso ɛbaa ɛbɛbɛfa adwuma no a wɔn nso 18 years for 18 years na wɔpanin Christian Protein wɔn nso ekura Onyankopɔn asɛm Bible ni mu a wɔn nso preachi wɔ Ghana ha sei sɛdeɛ ɛbɛyɛ a sɛbio Ghana foɔ no anaasɛ Gold Coasters no ɛbɛsesa from their traditional customs na wɔn aba abɛfa Kristosom ɛde atum wɔpanin yɛ pusu ya wobia antimi anye ne nsɛm na antum convert into Christianity na adansidi a wɔpanin Hans Werner de Bruyne ɛde tu dwa ne sɛ wɔpanin Christian Protein na adwuma a wotimi yɛ ɛne sɛ wɔno no produce translation of the Lord's Prayer na kyerɛ sɛ the Lord's Prayer no ɛne ayi no wɔpanin no convert na kyerɛ sɛ the Lord's Prayer the New Testament catechism ɛne ayi nyinaa no ɔno na convert no from brofo kasa no ɛde ba the Ghana language MNA so over Ghana Bible and all these other books na utimi nya Bible ne ye de ɛkan wom na utimi ɛde ɛte aseɛ no eti Openi Protein so edwuma ɔno so etimi edi ye no etimi edi bua ye no okay wɔno efiri hɔ no wɔn de abrantie bi a yɛfrɛ no Jacobus Elisa Johannes Captain na wɔno wɔyɛ ex-slave no ye slave a emre bi atwa mu no na Ivory Coast ɛna ba ye wo no wɔ Ghana ha sei ɛna yɛde ni kokɔ pie mu ɛwɔ the Leiden University ɛwɔ Holland ɛkɔkɔ kyerɛ ne Bible mu nsɛm ne ɛyi nti wɔno so wɔpanin no wɔn de ne ɛbɛbɛ pie mu ɛwɔ Elmina wɔno so ɛbɛkyerɛ adeɛ afro ɛwɔ Elmina from 1742 ɛna wɔde ɛkɔ ne nkrachi 1747 wɔde kɔ ne nkrachi wɔno so aborɔfo ne de ne bɛpie mu na Dutch Captain Elisa Johannes Jacobus wɔno nso ne dwumadi obedi ye ne preaching ne nsɛm wɔbɛka ye ne nyinaa no antentam obi ani wa wɔgye ne nsɛm ne etum mu ɛfa ne nsɛm no ɛde bɔ ne bo na ne dwuma ɔno nso timidi ye ne sɛ wɔno nso ɛsesa Bible ni anaasɛ wɔyɛ translation of the Bible no edit into what translated the Lord's Prayer and our Father who art in heaven no wɔn also translated into the Fanti language na kyerɛ sɛ yen heneja wo soro no Fantifoɔ ne ka no wɔn ɛna wɔyɛ the 10 commandments ne so wɔpɛ translated into the Fanti language ɛna or translated part of the catechism ɛna or publishing ni nyinaa or ma publishing ni nyinaa into the indigenous language said ɛbɛyɛ ebusuafoɔ no bi bɛyɛ den ɛbɛti aseɛ na wonim Openi FL Bartels also ɛwɔ asɛm bi a wɔka wɔkyerɛ mu a this rudiment of Christian faith given in a written form as well as orally to the mulattoes by Captain laid the foundation for the future mission. Wɔkyerɛ mu a Sa book yi 10 commandments ne ho nkrone ba Lord's prayer no opani ne translated from Brofo kasa na se Dutch na se Putuchi kasa mu into the indigenous language no. Eno na ebeye the bedrock and ebeye the foundation a other missionaries a won be pie mu ewo Gold Coast ene Ghana ha sei no. Wo mo nso edi gina so wote ase edi propagate Christianity no. Na wonim say a free 1751 to 1756. And as Abrano na Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. So wako Cape Coast Castle Penya. So wako eto. So wako to ewo Cape Coast Castle Penya. So wako to ewo Cape Coast Castle Penya. Ube unu say so omo de wo ye to no a. Ye de woko male dungeon no a. Baby a ye de mema slaves ni gu na. Ube say on top of the male dungeon no. Ya sorry dine. Eho na asori ni was asori ni your friend the propagation of the gospel. The propagation of the gospel SPG no. Na sa propagation of the gospel wo mo kokofa was some of penny bi ba ya your friend Reverend Thomas Thompson. Reverend Thomas Thompson. Now Reverend Thomas Thompson ebeye the missionary and chaplain at the Cape Coast Castle. Anything na okopie mo Cape Coast Castle a penny no ye born dini anase ye ka ne ho ensem wo ho no. Na de etie ne se wo penny no free Cape Coast Castle anase wo wie ne dwumadi no woja a lot of documentation on na dwuma wo be ye den wo be di ye e wo Cape Coast Castle. Enti wo kiremu a was they say following his arrival at the Cape Coast Castle in May 1751 no Wochiremua, and I quote him was say, I preached in the presence of the chief of Cape Coast, Obrimpon Kujo. I baptized at the same time one white child and one mulatto, and the next Sunday 2 more children, both of whom were mulattoes. Wopeni Thompson and Reverend Thompson and war kasa asimi. Openi Reverend Thompson say edano kwasi adano obe pie mu wo Cape Coast. Ewo May 1751 no asa adano an wo gina ne na ebo Cape Coast man hene. Obrimpon Kujo obo nasu. Emma Obrimpon Kujo eji Kristo etu mu se ne kra ene na je nkwa. Sa adano anso mulatto ni baako enso wo sa abo natu. Obo nasu. Mumfa ncheme bo nasu. Efiri wono ne kwasi ada etoso no emrantie mienu nkwada mienu so esa baaye ma ne bo wo mo asu na kire se na adwuma no den koso na wo kire mu a wonya kwan preachi wo Obrimpon Kujo Cape Coast man hene no wonya kwan preachi wo na himfie na wo ko preach na himfie no de wo ko hunu ye ne se ansa na wo benya empanimfo na na say Ghanaians ne audience ama oti wo mo asem no awoka no sese wo de preaching wo de kofa wo mamamne ne ho woti ase na wo de fa life after death ene sa na ema ne ho ansa na wakwa introduce Christianity na mo nyesa wo ko shase with Christianity no a enya de a empani no ebeti ase woti ase ebeti ase enti that was the method that wo pani Reverend Thompson we use ya the preachy actually the indigenous people any of the elite of the Cape Coast palace no and na ye kwa yanimu a wochira wopani Reverend Thompson wochira wo hunu se indigenous people ni ehunu se Christosom na yade bia so omugi tumu a ene wo mo traditions ene wo mo eniema no omudwadie kura ni wo mabrabo no ebeba besei no wote ase said the na Christianity no aba yoyi a wuyi kwasi adafiri wa every day you have a section of other Christians wo so ye wo so wote ase this is what the indigenous people now no mo ho sa abre no mo fight against say esum we ya mode abayi hunu ni say yagitumu a emre bi a idi yanim no ebeba besei ye ne emanyina wote ase na womo nso a na sa abre no womo ti ase no womo agi atum se Kristosom no womo pene no womo nso etia womo tia Reverend Thomas Thompson nan so se wo pani Thompson yi de tia ye nkrofo no Kristosom no womo pese womo bagi atum ni se wo di se womo gi wosum ni tumu a ba be se womo traditions womo mamre ni niema wo mo ye etike de ye tuufo se wo pedan ubenya wo mo amo ma ba betie wo nsem no a enkasa ada no fa bara be hye ebenada kwasi ada no de wo mbe kopo ntinya de wo mbeba wo pese wonya wo mo no mutie wo asem no a fa wo nsem no be hye ebenada firi se ebenada no eye benada eye ebenada for bosompo po epo abena enti epo abena no na epo abena bosompo enti edu benada yen ya yete epo ya no ha nyina no yen kopo ye wofie anase ye net disabre no wetimi enya na mo ne yaka mo nsem na ye ko yanim no opani Thomas Thompson ete sansem no a woka no wosi nkete se da bi sa abibifo we wo mo traditions ne wo mo custom no ankasa na nye papa what ya say evil eno na ya ba ye ba be kagu enti ye ntimi nsokambo ye Christianity no to their traditions and custom what ya say enti no de mo ka ne de enya de a ye begye die ye nyintum ye koso kwasi ada no a ye pese ye som no sa kwasi ada na ye beye na ye bepe kwan a ye befa mu bejai de mo ye no na kwasi mo ba beti ye nsem wopani Thomas Thompson ni nsem a wo kan ye ma men kan ye yenko yanim was say to strike at their false worship to you one say the bia me catch will say the entire Christianity no was built on arrogance and ignorance. What you say? First and foremost, Openi Thomas Thompson, you don't know the entire yenanano fantefo no na ebenada no womo enkopo no observe epo no na womo fre epo no ebenada. Sebio epo no edo wa asesi eja nature wo kra no wo home one kasa no as nipa and everything in nature no ewo da se de home na e cleaning ne ho na e recycle ne ma wote ase tinananom hunu sa no ebenada ye da wo mo so di jato ho se epo no emfansiesie ne ho wote ase ko se yakom yakoye ne ma bebre ti epo ne emfansiesie ne ho mfanhyehyɛ ne ma wote ase na da fofrade e chi ayetimi akodi ejuma wunim ne enti anananom ye sa no hwede wo pani no eka e de afa that customs and tradition ne ho was say to strike at their false worship endeavored to convince them of their false notions and to expose the folly of their idolatrous and superstitious rites, so that if possible I might disengage their minds from these for reception and entertainment of divine truth. Enti wo kiremu a said ye beya ye bejai nananum bejai wo mu jimie no wo majai wo mabosomsom no wo majai wo mu nkwasiade no wo mu gidie no no wo majai aba di wo twire di aponyankopon kwan sese ye disengage wo ma from nema phone no wo ye ne so na said ye beya Kristosum no betimi aba be di wo mu trimu dem no maje Bible no ensem no ayeden atum. This is what Wopani Thomas Thompson wakafa sebiu amamre ni amane a na nananom nam so e de observe epo no ene eho ene emanyina wasan etoa so a wa manensi wo wasan toa so a and I quote, I consider them to be more civilized. Once a walker obi a walker wo mo som ho asem na walker say adulterous ni e superstitious one kasa me who says ankrofo yi wo mo nye evil, they are good people, wo mo with good intentions morally. And a nipa ye kaso obi ye nipa bonefo a ye ni moral upbringing ene ye de hwe woti ase opani yi chire mo wo say I consider them to be more civilized people in general, for far removed from barbarity and savagery. They are certainly capable and fitter to deal with. They have higher quality. Enti opeso wa chire mu a enkrofo ya mabeto wo mu wo Gold Coast no wo mu ye enkrofo bi o mu nim nyansa wo mani ate wote ase wo mu nya wudifo wo mu nya kwamukafo wo mu nya abosomsomfo se de ye pese o ka kire no wo mu ye enkrofo bi a wo ma dwuni mu da ho a se mitimi convince wo mu ye betimi adi wo ma dwuni mu dem na yetimi de Bible na ewurewuru o mu tinima ma o ma ye de ye pe na emo morally no omo ye nkufo bi a omo high moral high ground so ti ase omo nye nkrofo bi omo ye basabasa omo ye morally capable what ti ase asem a opani no de to edwa no to dwa no na wonim wo mo di Kristo so no etentam wo fanteman mu na chese sabre no mfantefo ne de wo mo agyeja wo mo ho ani mfantefo ne de wo mo agyeja wo mo ho e de wo mo man no ahya abrofo ne nsa ama abrofo ne de Kristo som no ayeden aba bipiem na de ema de missionaries no ekira Kristo som no antimi amanantre e wo fantefo na saase ne so na fantefo na anya antum ne se wo mo kire mu in 1738 1750 1756 and 1777 sabre no ana asantefo no ne mfantefo no edi ntokwa gina mu na esan ntokwa ahodo no a ekoso no ntino na emwa kura emma missionary work no enye de enkoso ane na yenhwa de around 1709 and Johannes Rask missionary a friend Johannes Rask ordained priest from Copenhagen also womode ne bepiem the Christian book Osu Castle no say one also emra meye chaplain wo castle ho na one also emfa Christosum ne emepiem wo yenuanom nkranfo no asase so na one also ebebepiem no one also ne nsem a wo kene wo say they one also hunu ye no wo kene wo say they have high opinion of themselves and walk with very proud gait. Openinu no walk and craft one asemu watch that. They have a very high opinion of themselves and walk with very high gait. What's up? So I was saying they are sound and healthy and live long. Although their food is truly poor. Na dokunoni mekodi enye poor saying. Although their food is truly poor, but what I think prolongs their lives and that they are always in good spirits and laughing, never in despair or ever worried about anything. Thus they preserve their spirit and their bodies and are not overworked either, since they take both their sorrow and their work in the easiest way possible. This is remarkable food. Your friend Johann Rask, an ordained priest. Wano ebepiem in a Christian broadcaster and I want also a kasa asemwe ediafa ye nananom enkran for hono now enti we ene ekwan a enam so a Christosom enam so ede bepiemu ewo we ne ekwan a enam so a Christosom ede efa so ebepiemu ewo Gold Coast anase Ghana emaimu hase yebo yanimu ono nana kwabranketia wotoso enan nana kwabranketia wotoso enan oman hene of British secondary sabre no na wono woye ne doctorate of philosophy ni thesis a wo twereye ni thesis no wo kire mu se Christosom no a abrofo ne de baaye no even though nananom antiase no omo anyi antum no wo behwa ye nuanom mfantefo no a Christopher no a saint biti say Saint Anthony saint bi ye na no mfantefo no efa ya wo incorporate into their local traditions wo hwa wo friend Nana Antona anase Nana Antona eti Nana Antona ade a se ye nuanom mfantefo no ehye wo fa womo ehye womo fa mina bakatue no womo ehye womo fa womo consulting womo gu ensa edema no in fact womo kura no egitum se woye busum bi anase Nana Antona no Saint Anthony ena ye anu mfantefo ebra Christosom no eba afoforo no womo converting into one of their abosom enti during the bakatue emina edna bakatue afahye no Nana Antona bosom a womo eyi mpaye de ma no wo mo kira wo meba wo ma niema bibiri wo ye niema bibiri ba na ntona no Saint Anthony na ya converting into our local deity our local deity wo pani a ye frɛ no nana enketia sekendi man hene sabre no wono wono so edi etu edwano no around the 18th century ye be hunu say still na Christianity no enyi nhini ewo sabio yeman mu ha sei eno enenam so a Christian leader said mpanimfo bi ti say Philip Koku Joseph Smith ene David Asante mo enyina no edi wo mo ho agi mu in the 1772 edi wo mo enyina agi mu a na wo mo so preachi sabio Bible ni mu nsem ana say Christofo no ho ensem no yehwa de we say around the 1770s nim no European missionaries ni be hunu say wo mu dwumadie no wo mu di no ebekoso yi a age se wo mu ne local chiefs no ehemfo no enya nkita hodie if it's a one ehemfo no na ebema wo mu ba bi atena ena ehemfo no ewo control over wo mu manfo no ena ehemfo no kran so na ebema mu protection ewo ba bi a mo kwa akoye mu missionary works no enti wo mu hunu say so wo mu ne wo ehemfo no enya nkita hodie a ebeboa wo mu pa enti de wo mu ye ne say omo started say wo mu chiche ehemfo na niema ebi chiche ehemfo no chariot ebi chiche ehemfo ni nkonya ebi chiche omo ensa ahodo ne yi said ebe ye ehemfo ne bepa omo asem whilst omo so ye sa no ehemfo ne so hunu say se wo mu timiji missionaries ni bit na wo mu asase so a na che so wo mu ni wo mu krom hofo na brofo na ba benya enkitamude kasubo mu a say trade bi a omo betimi ni omo nya favorable terms when it comes to trade say ekoba say other tribe beto hye omo so a omo betimi anya partnership etuo ne ho nkoro ne ba sa enkrofo ne de beden ebeba bedom wo mo enti wo mo eye wo ma dwene say wo mo ene sa ehemfu yi beden ebedi enkita ho na wo mo atimi ene wo mo adi sa adwuma no na we na enam so a Francis Lodevich Bartel, former ambassador to Ghana, ambassador of Ghana to West Germany. Ono ni nsemo ono editu dwana se wo yes anhwehwe mu di ono hunu se de ema missionaries no de omo ho batan hemfo no ni nyina ne se omo hunu se omo de omo ho batan hemfo no a they will get the necessary protection and hemfo no omanfo ne nso hunu se hemfo ne sa nkrofo we edi nkita ho a ebema nkrofo ne nso anya arehemu ewo omo so dwumadie ne ho no omo frɛ omo omayedai omo aba bepie mu ewo omo dwumadie no ase. Now yekoye nim no ye beba be hunu say up until 1901 na sabio Christosum no a ewo Africa na se wo Ghana ha say any empire no said de ye ka no na etetetenchen akwakoye nkwanchen niema obi ani ho a wode ne ho eyeden agimuo na until the British colonial administration be defeated the Ashanti Empire finally in 1901 no and after die Christosum anka se benya ntini before then no na sabio ni ama omo ba bi omo ti omo ye missionary wo Kumasi o but na nya de obi aye de agi wo mu nsem ni etum na we na na enam so omo de tete akire numerous letters and the kokoma the colonial administration ewo UK say esum bi aba Ghana ha sei esum foforo bi aba Ghana ha sei ya sa esum no aba no ye frɛ no abriwa sa esum no na akwakoye te sɛ sorry said ye sum sorry for na nei wo mo ye na ye bonyom ne ye sa ne ye he na abriwa no de na kyerɛ ne sɛ sabio enwene wo nua ho bɔne ena ne ye di tu ahonhom bɔne ye di tu abeyie ne honhom bɔne nti ye honhom sorry ena na the Ghana fo ni bi afa na abrofo no missionaries ni be hunu say
one any jisa everyone who sa
sorry ne ho rather than omo missionaries ne ho eti womo hyase e de ho complain ekokoma the local missionary local administrators no colonial administrators ne say mo hwe esom foforo no agrofo na kwakofa ba no e de oyeni ebeba local authorities ni hunu say there bi we no anya ade bi ade bone bia eye womo hunu say omo twa kwama omo say enye bone no empani amana omasuma anyu womo etre countless of letters e de kokopiem
ewo Britain man de kopiem ewo Britain man mu na answer ne
beko sa ensem ne so no in 1841 Thomas Freeman, a British Methodist missionary, enso ekokopiem okumase na okokopiem okumase no wode nkrata ekokoma Asante hene kwakudua sabre no opani kwakudua wodi kan enete Asante akonwa ne so se wohia wopani no ne opani no adins enkita ho kakra efi se wopese wobebie missionary ewo Asante
mu opani ni so ede nanu
yisem ede kokoma ne se opani Freeman eye se wodi ani di amba se wo pese woni mi hia di nkita ho na emom kwasi ada no a wodi akwa se kwasi ada ebe na wunya ya woni mi bedi nkita ho no kwasi ada ya ebe eye kwasi ada ye di akwasi da ye di akwasi da nso ya eda bi a ye de hye ye nananom animonyam ewo niema pa ene ekonde a omaba beko amayen eti mitimi nya sa adwumadie ni ho
na mene wo sofopani ma mehia na once again me question me busa ne se
mo asofo mo sorry ehemfo a ene madane ya kristofo no ehemfo madane ya kristofo no edu akwaside a me pacho ya mo yeden muja akwaside ni ho ekomo asori ana se muja ya asori no ebedi akwaside no mo nananom se mimusa mo emamo mo senpai enti wahine kwakudua anu yisem a wode kokoma wahine Freeman se enya de a wobetimi ne na hia sa akwasi ada ne firi se eda no enye
abo yedi akwasi de enti ade a ebeboa enti wahine na ema
ne tie ne ho ase se meeting ne yevan konkoshe on the 13th of December 1841 and the 13th of December 1841 sabre no ne yede nkomo ne kwosha eno de sabre no ne yedi kwasi de na wie yedi fodu awie ani yedi bibi awie chi ne sabre ne de kwan da ho yebetimi edi san komo no ansem ya me kan wo pani Thomas Freeman wono ankasa na ekuruchiri sa ensem yi edi egu ne nkrata mu wuti ase eno making kan edi amam opani Freeman wono ankasa ne report from 1841
to 1842 ehun nsem okay na wono uchire mu a opani Freeman echire mu a
say I embrace the opportunity of informing the chief that our special object as missionaries was the introduction of Christianity into his dominion, and for that purpose we begged his protection, favor, and permission to build a mission house in Ashanti, to which the chief answered, I will protect you and give you land to build the house on. If you open in it,
wani wopani mens wopani
Asante hene woni Asante hene edi nkita ho no kwakudua edi nkita ho no ewieye no opani kwakudua ema ne te ne ho ase se asase na wo pe edi aye ne mission house no problem bi ani ho ye be ma ne baabi ama ne de aye ne mission house again in 1842 wopani Freeman esa etoa so eka se wopani kwakudua wodi kan willingly offer protection for the missionary. In the report, the work and he was saying,
I rejoice to say that the Lord has been mercifully pleased
to crown our effort in Ashanti with success. Our important negotiation with the chief have been brought to a comfortable end. That Reverend Brooklyn will be under his protection as resident missionary in Ashanti. The chief has given us land and in a very airy part of Ashanti. in a very airy part of town on which to build a mission house and allows
people to attend divine without restraint and treat us
with uniform kindness and attention. Eti wochiremu a wopani na mo kwan so mo nshi missionary wa mo asase eti sabre wopani brooking na ye gya ne ho as Asante memu no leader of Christianity missionary na wono enhwe no wontoto niema ohene ne so am mo ho kwan so obebo mo ho ban na emom ne nkrofo ne kra ne so no ne manfo ne so nyaade ebeden obesi wo mo kwan se wo mo kwan mo ma mejoin ne Christosom na anase
sa enkomo we
at the same time na we kwa akopie mu wo Kumasi ni we akodi nkomo ne age na tum fefe no sa bre na around sa time no ano na Methodist missionary no Reverend Wrigley was also actually up to the Methodist headquarters in London. This is in 1836. Wacheren homa akwa Methodist Catholic no in London. Methodist headquarters in London. Na nisemu a workeni. Nisemu a workeni was say, I have been introduced to the chief
at Cape Coast, and they have offered their protection and support for
the mission. Enti wusha na sebiu ehemfo no, they were not hostile. They were not hostile to the missionaries. Uchi ase, womo je womo efel so. Womo eje womo efel so. Now one say, whilst missionaries no eka niema wo fel so ni eka yi no. Missionaries ni bi nso kire say na wo manfo ni nso de ayamuye ene wodo ene je womo efel so. Reverend Thackeray, a Methodist missionary, one also kind the warm reception.
Also say, during the opening
day, the chief, court officials, and members of the church came with their presents of yam, eggs, oranges, bananas, fowls, fish, and in so doing, the chief and his people gave me a fancy welcome. Into a chirimua, mfantefo no je wo mo efel so on the opening day no bi be che wo mo nkukọ che wo mo fish bi che wo mo bayire chese niema bibiri se de ne mo asofo
no de yom na chese asofo no de wo ba no nipa ho ano mo be didi sa
de ne mo sofo no nso masofo no ensu edidi wo mo sad. But one thing is, in spite of all these friendly overtures, said the yenuanom ene ye nananom eje wom efel so no, missionaries no in a way no ekeka ensem bi ekire wom colonial administrators na sabiu na enye nokre na ne nyina ni gira ne se missionaries ne feel se colonial
administrators need take control of the entire Gold Coast and the Ashanti colonies.
Ebema womu enya womu fa hudie etimi atu anamo akoba bi omo pese omo kubia no ayeden akwa womu ensem. And even though nkrofo bi gi womu fel so no, some of the remarks to the bia no omo eye de fa the indigens no ho no na enya akono. Woshe incident bia esi in January 1834. January 1834, Ebra Basel Mission, Andres Rees, a movie from the Christian broadcaster Osu, Ekoko PMU Ekrupon. Now Okoko PMU Ekrupon Paramount Chief Adodankwa. Nana Adodankwa, Eje no wofel so, chese ebie ne proma wo moje wo mo fel so, eyi ntwene kigirigirigirigiri, ebo ededejije wo mo so no. Wopanini nsem a wo ka. Wopanini nsem Andres Rees ensem a wo ka ne say was say should not bring or say Adodankwa spelled out the taboos ndo chiremu a ebere okoko pie mu okuro ne so no ekwape mampon hene Adodankwa na Adodankwa echre no kromu ho taboos amane ne amamre de ye chiri ne de ye mpe se de if you say mpani say obosumo ne obetena na wo kire wo na chiwade this one ba na wo se wo ne ye ba betena de a ene ye nso ye man yi de ye chire ne de ye mpani wo kire ne bibia nti wo kire mu a Adodankwa spelled out taboos of the towns. Now we say you should not bring a dog. You should not bring a dog into the town, for the gods dislike them. Reese would not farm, or see, you should not farm on Mondays and Fridays, for these days were sacred days to the gods. You should not kill a python or a black monkey, for they are totem of the royal clan. Throughout his stay, Reese lived according to these taboos. Enti Wapeni Smith ena ekuru chire saa nsem we nyina. Wo chire mu a ebra a wo sofo address Reese ekokopie mu wo ekuropon akuapem no. De ekokoba ye ne se wo hene na na adodankwa e ma ne te ne ho ase se ye man we no. Eni wo kwan se wo de kraman eba so. Wo ti ase ye man we mu no. Sabio dadoada ne da fiada. Yenye afuo da sabio abosom no eda a wo mo de ehome enti saa da no yenye afuo. Emfa kraman emma asase we su firi se abosom omo wa asase so no omo mpe kraman enti mfa kraman enye dai emma emmepie asase so. Asase a waba be pie so iwuhunu nanka inkuno ane wuhunu ade tuntumu a inkuno efiri se wo mo ye ebusuafo etotem enti yenku saa emwa no ane yenku saa mwa no yaji opani efelsui Reese describe the scene, the scenery idwaba mpanifo boy edeje osofu pani no wajimu wachira we describe the scene as noisy procession under drums and shouting, which the entourage led by the great meeting place at a Krupon. Into which remua naturally say to ye bogungurungurunguru what ya say said ye yamamreni yamani esenwano. Na the many anyu ewo nsem what can I say? We describe the Krupon community as noisy order. What you say as noisy order and noisy order. Now that is the happening in a Akropon. No. In 1841, Ebra Freeman, Thomas Freeman, ekopie Kumasi, now walk discuss the possibility say a mission any school, ebaba be PM or Ashante no. James Sayford wonu enya permission from Ashanti kwakudia na say wonu enhodi Christian services ewo Kumase emro no nso na sabio Kumase indigens no woba bia yenya wo hwe na chese wo manfo na agi atum enti Freeman agi tumu say Kumase hemfo no they were not hostile na emom ahemfo no elia ahemfo ni bi mo mote wo mo asese Christianity ne nya de ebeje wa ahemfo ye beje wa Asante man mu firi se mo de akwa se infantefo no ebra akwadua mo ma kwan ema Christianity eba Asante man mu no ye nyina ye nim the role Christianity play anyhow the missionaries undermine Asantefo ahemfo the letters a wo mo trade sabotage ye e kan se Asantefo ahemfo no engage in inipekum chese womo ma Asantefo ahemfo emanfo no enye de eho ento womo chese womo de womo fa oyone eni eniemafo eni niema ense emfata so na wunim na meken sabre na ahemfo yi womo ajeje womo gift no gift from Queen Victoria pictures a ye di Queen Victoria aboso ye di ababe chichen himfui footwear umbrellas ni sa na ema nyina wo mo ayede wo ma gigi ni nyina na Freeman was of penny Freeman yenhwe how a wo describe wo penny kwakudua Asante hene kwakudua wo kiremu a wo say kwakudua is the citadel of Satan or say Asante the Ashanti kingdom is the citadel of Satan. Asemi yaw. Obi a wode esun ba ya ma asase ne de ama free ya nton ama. Ya sa ma protection. Ye ba ho ban. Ye ma ba bi da. Ye ma bibi di kama. Na hwe nsem a wo kafa ye hene ho. Wo say the Ashanti kingdom is the citadel of Satan, and the Ashanti chief Kwakudua the first as the depot of Prince of Darkness. Na just Asante man there. Ehɔ na bronsam no ankasa no hɔ na nakonwa si a wɔte. Na Asante hene Kwakudua de. Ono ankasa won na ye Prince of Darkness no won na ye sumu hene no ankasa won na chesi wiase nyina bone hene ono ankasa eno no we na Freeman edi tu dwa Freeman amana sense wow watwere a letter on the second visit to Ashanti. The second visit to Ashanti in 1842 no watwere a letter to the Methodist Missionary Office in London and walk Asante hene was Kwakudua ho nsem e de akere Britain for no the entire nsem a walking was say have these poor victims no voice, have they no tale to tell? I think I hear them lifting up their voices and crying to British Christians especially, come, pray, come and look at our unhappy country. See how they groan beneath the iron despotism of the Prince of Darkness. It is true that it is a beautiful country. It is fertile, its fertile soil is producing 100-fold. But what avails its beauty or fertility when it is converted into a slaughterhouse? Eti the openi can in 1842 ne say Asante hene Kwakudua a odikan wono wachichire ne manfo asantefo no gase e de bone ni ewudie e na eku omo asante manfo no ema omo ne so a esu a omo nsu afra Britain fo Kristofo nyina ne se Britain fo Kristofo yesrebo omo mra Kumase mumra Asante Empire na mumra medie na Kwakudua Prince of Darkness wode ye nambone kwan so a wo ku ye wo to ye so wore woti ase this is what a missionary will be a woni won krofo ba ye yama obabi a woti a wo ye wa adwuma no hwe letters a wotwere koma the Methodist missionary e de afa asantefo ho woti ase enti wo kire mu a na kire se Kwakudua ne Asante mpanimfo no kwan a wo mo de asantefo no enam so no enye asempapa kura enye asempapa kura woti ase ane na wonim when by the 1870s no na say ababa yet say many of the missionaries no womun nsem a omo kan say British Empire no finally womo emfa womo sekan na emra me wo Asante na womo nyi Asante na say womo ni asantefo ne so se de womo nuanom emfantefo no de womo esom na ye de ahye womo omasase no aide ashe womo nsa no yanhwa de the Anglican missionary the Church of England na womo so ayo womo se womo so womo de womo asofo no womo nya womo ho se womo ya asofo o womo ayo womo se womo ya extension womo ayo womo se womo ya extension of the British colonial administrators. Now Openi John Poby ni observation and wo ye efa asa de ne ho no wo kan wo kira wo say the Anglican Church in Ghana have tended to have an establishment mentality complex. Though officially the church was never established in the Gold Coast or Ghana. In Tinkrofo we are sorry in free Ghana how, but omu kutasa establishment mentality complex no because omu bosses the British Empire no na commission omu nti omu feel say they are extension of them. The omu ba said the omu ye de wo me omu metris wo omu metris wa no ane na unim ade a na ehu enwanwa wo Christianity eba be spread in Ghana na say Gold Coast ni after the First World War. Protestants no any the German Basel mission any the Bremen missionaries ni nyina no na the British for no ne ayi ni hu omo se omo ye spies enti saa bre no British for no deported a lot of these missionaries back into their home onwanwa ane British Empire no in Ghana and as a Gold Coast no it deported a lot of the Basel missionaries and the Bremen missionaries. If you say omo ye Germans, they saw them as omo ye spies, almost spy ama Britain for Germans no during the First World War. Into omo deported a lot of them. Tell them catch us say enye nyamesemo asemu. They came here to play their politics and to build their commerce and not to save your soul. And that is what happened. That is what happened. Now, say ye kwa ye nimu a one will say the General Secretary of the Methodist Society, Reverend Dr. Beecham, Emma sa anuyi same way to the British Parliament Select Committee on West Africa in 1842. Now, ebra omuko akodi konkonsa ache the British Parliament and then the British people say so omo beto sha asantefo ne so edifiti asantefo no asofo no e di Christianity bae no they were the brain behind all this nonsense, these lies say and asantefo no yesi and we mu yesi ti enkoto o nche omo so no ye hwe asem bi a Dr. Reverend Beecham kan ye enti Reverend Beecham was asked whether he thought the Methodist missionaries derived any considerable advantage for the British fort on the Gold Coast. Enti Yebusane say in the British Parliament, Yebusane say wopani wo pesa wo kire say yenko tonhye the entire Gold Coast, including the Ashanti Empire ne yanyini nyina. If we say yeje a ene be mama ye safe aye mo adwuma. Na ye musa we wo koye no British force no fort na ewo ho dada no. Wo koye ne say na wo hu no. E na wo kire mu say yes, I am bound to say the British authorities and administrators upon the Gold Coast have always manifested a favorable disposition to our missionaries' undertakings, and they have offered the kind of felicity which a government can ever afford to persons under his control. This is the Select Committee report, the British Parliament Select Committee report of 1842. And sa enkomo eka ho. Now committee chairman, British Select Committee chairman, Parliament Select Committee chairman, enzu ebusa na se bi obusa no say, and you feel greater confidence altogether in dealing with Gold Coast in consequence of the presence of some fragment of British power. And our penny Reverend Beecham, no say, I do know that we feel greater confidence so far as personal security is concerned. We also have greater confidence in this respect that owing to extension of the British influence over the country generally, the missionaries can now go about their work without interruptions, which they sometimes experience among savage and barbarous people. Obi a wamama mo asase ete so asase ya nto ama mo ye bo mo ho ban no. Look at how Osofu Mua describe one nananom to the British Parliament, calling them savage and barbarous people. This is the Select Committee report, British Parliament Select Committee report 1842. And I capture this and come we say. Now, in 1874, and the British Empire near Asante no edwagu mu a saa bere no wo defeated the Ashanti Empire ma Ashanti ne emre eti eno etoko so na the total victory no in 1901 total victory no ekọ so at the British Empire no finally wo defeated Ashanti ebe shi Kumasi nyina enti eno enam ho ema afede na chese Kumasi aba be ya amamfo no say asofo no timi ko ba bi o mo pese o mo ko bia no ekokodi wo mo djuma kokoye wo mo asori said the omo pe enti enam so ema the district commissioner na wonim ekokofa sa niema we course no and sorry sem ni bibia course no undermine enhimfo what you say undermine enhimfo na in 1910 and we kura de sorry in the 1880s no and ye nyina ye hunu say the Berlin conference no ebeche Africa mu chiche territories ni minti part of the Ashanti empire no ekokodi what we now call the Ivory Coast and ebi nso ababedi in Gold Coast na esan se Christosum na amanfo ediom ho akwakodom Christosum na asofo no etutugu omo ensofo ensori manes asum se omo tutugu ensori manasum se mamu nko ayie ye festivals amamu mfa mo hu nkogim ye frɛ oman adwuma amamu mfa mo hu nkogim na we na ehimfo no ede eho kwadu board the British colonial administrators they said this is in 1910 this is 1910 omo de kokodom the British colonial yini say sabio mo nsore no ama sabio ye nkrofo ye frɛ kwasafo dwuma a wo mo ma ye festivals omo nye dey wo mo emfa wo mo hu ma magim chese bibia ye bia no wo mo emfa wo mo hu ma magim ti we na the district commissioner na adwene se sa na tie de ama mi modwa na me mfrɛ the people involved na yenhwe ekwan a ye befa so a mo nsem ya mo de aba bedan ye behwe ne yesiesie ampa empani bodwa na empani ebodwa no wo mo representatives o mo frɛ ye no wo mo frɛ the mission societies no pe in them among the mission societies no Methodist ni baako Methodist sofo baako Basre sofo asofo miensa ena Roma asofo mienu ena the colonial administrators ne frɛ wo mo ya mfrɛ any traditional authority ya mfrɛ wo hini bia asofo yi nko a so wo the blackmail na ebra wo mo efrɛ wo mo no wo mo frɛ sa nkrofo yi a ya mfrɛ enhimfo no this is the ruling a course ruling the colonial administrators a course and once again we part of the Gold Coast Methodist annual records 1910 Gold Coast annual Methodist records 1910 edition and a report to sasem enti wo mu kire a mamenkan a wo see enti embrace say yahye etia enhimfo no ehimfo no omo de omo complain akoma se asofo na ma se ye manfo no omo ma kwasafo dwuma communal labor ye yie kura omo se yabosomsem ye fashe kura omo se yabosomsem bibi ye bi omo se yabosomsem to omo fo omo hunyim report omo de ba ye ni omo say no Christian shall be called upon to perform any fetish rite service but shall be bound to render service to his chief on ceremonial occasions when no element of fetish practice is involved. Secondly, an effort should be made to draw a distinction between fetishism and purely secular ceremonial service. Indeed, don't person omo kira ne say, efiri na ekuri, wahini bia ni wa wo shefa na wo ye bibia abosomsom na say rituals ewo mu a wo kwan say we invite Christo ni bia na say wo ye bibi na sa ne ma ni bi wo mu a mon kwa monye mfre Christo ni bia na Christo ni bia so fa ho nkokogimbi ese ya yete ya ta asesu moma o mo kwan mo hu de o mo de mo fa so. This is how Christianity and now so spreading on this land called Ghana once upon a time Gold Coast. 80 Sadia na make no around 1911 na abriwa court no na chese ajimu dendende we sebo ne ayuti ase ane sa bre no na sorry wo Ghana hapa sorry no sorry ya na sabiu akonfo ne ayi nso de omo ho age ade ni moti ase ye boba ne de tusuma ye de tu abayiye ne ehho nkro ne ba na ni nyina de koso. Now enti wenum nyina no ekoso no eno na the missionary commissions ne omo ha nyina no omo nyina kan omo tambo mu etwere de come the colonial administrators ne se sa abiriwa no in 1911 no so si yitwam na no na omo antwam colonial administrators na ekire a omo ewo fi ha se ne kire a ade we ne nya ade a say bibi enya ade say obi ade ti ade na mani abre say yengunu omo mfa nsa hwe omo nya eku di cha bia enti nya ade ebede yebegu no na yekoye nimu ubehunu se missionaries no etwere koma the local authorities na omo anya ho hwe no omo amana nso ha omo etwere kokoma the colonial secretary in London se efiefo mungu saa de no a mungu huzum sori no a ene ye de ko London ebia London de London ebe ye bibia ye de e de afa ho enti the colonial administrator no na ye busa ne se adan na asofo ne de wo mo nsem ba ye se bibifo no akwa som fufuro bi aba sese no Kristo som no mo pese o mbe ya eno na sese o mo nyina akwa adan na unkogu saa de na adan na wuntwam na eno na colonial secretary no chire mu chire fa the abriwa court ne ene hwan ekwan efa so eye na adwuma to wo chire mu o say the Christian missionaries have found that they are unable to attract congregations when they go on a preaching tour, so they have assumed a hostile attitude against the new religion, which is called abriwa. In my judgment, I do not think there is anything wrong with the court. It makes the natives obedient to law and order in the district. To ochiremu abriwa no yekobo nyoma sane atu huhumbone na abriwa no kire se di unua ni enye unua bone kanokure kire unua mfa unua de no saa de na nya de de bone bi aba na de enti a missionaries nani abre wo ho ne se wo mokọ no wo mokọ akoka wo mu Jesus Christ asem no locals ni ntie wo mu ntie biem sese abriwa no ano mokọ so eni nti na ama nkrofo we ani aso a wo mani abre se kwan bi aso no yentu saa esom no ase emfa emfiri oman we mu enti the district commissioner Armitage na asem ono so ka no ono so atwere command the colonial secretary ne say the missionaries naturally object to abriwa as the dancing and singing associated with the court attract people and militate against their effort to preach to the people. Enti wopeni na ze mo kan ze eyeyaw na ye wo mo ya. Oti ase eyeyaw na ye wo mo ya. Na eyeyaw na ye wo mo ya no. Eni nti na wo de nam so wo mo pese wo mo kire mo se saa esom no enye nti mumra metwam no. We saa ade we ho yaw ene nam so a the colonial officers no oti ase wo mo de nam so etwerechwere ho nkrata officially in 1910 no. Ye de bibe to the Ashanti Empire no. Because they needed that freedom to move around and spread the lies they call Christianity. We na nam so a Christianity ene ababeji ntini ewo ye Ghana ha se ya ene ba bia wo befa bia no ubie o window a kwasi ada bia no de even every day ubie o window a de ukotena ka mu a wo so radio wo so TV a ye the Jesus Christ ene Bible mu ensem. We na ekwan a Christianity efa so be pie mu Gold Coast Ashanti Empire and the entire country called Ghana. We did in an echidom hine. Jumedie abakosem history 101. It was a sawaje bre amen nensu yesua de. Mesra say you have to like, share and subscribe to this channel.